Is the PS5 Pro actually worth upgrading to? Well, if better graphics, and sometimes only slightly better graphics, or being able to play base PS5's 30 FPS quality modes at a full 60 FPS sounds good, then a PlayStation 5 Pro might actually be worth considering. I have my PS5 Pro, I have my base PS5, and I'm going to show you a bunch of games side by side to figure out what actual difference this makes, and if it's possibly worth spending £699 on, which doesn't even get you a disc drive. And if you do find this review helpful, then a cheeky little like and subscribe would be fantastic. So what are the pros of the PS5 Pro? Well, there's 67% extra graphics cores and 45% faster rendering. We have their new PSSR upscaling tech, plus we get double the storage, now 2 terabytes, 28% faster RAM, and also extra couple of gigs of the stuff, Wi-Fi 7, 8K support, technically, a new enhanced image quality in PS4 game setting, a slight bump to the processor speed, and also this slimmer disc-free design. Xbox did the same thing by calling this disc-free, as if it's a feature. You now have to spend £80 or $100 extra if you want to use physical discs, which a lot of people do because it's a whole lot cheaper than buying games off the PSN store. And if that's not bad enough, the only ones I could actually find to buy were being scalped for almost twice the price on eBay. Not a great start then, given the $699 price tag. And if you add on the optional vertical stand, the optical drive, and also maybe a second controller because you fancy playing with a friend, then it's going to cost you nearly £1,000. For context, bear with me, the PS4 Pro launched at £350 or $400, so half the price in the UK, which actually was the same price as the original PlayStation 4. So this mid-gen refresh is a whole lot more expensive. A secret weapon of the PS5 Pro is PSSR, or PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, which uses AI to intelligently upscale a lower resolution image to look as much like the native 4K as possible, but with less aliasing and artifacts than the usual upscaling techniques, like the old PlayStation checkerboard. Think of it as Sony's take on Nvidia's DLSS or AMD's FSR upscaling tech on your gaming PC. And most Pro-enhanced games do make use of PSSR, along with the Pro's extra horsepower to improve the visuals or get you to 60 FPS with the kind of fidelity that was previously only possible at 30 on the base PS5. And this can also boost your PlayStation VR 2 titles as well, just as long as the devs update them. I mean, I could waffle on for hours talking about the value of the PS5 Pro. I mean, could you buy a gaming PC for similar money and get this performance? The answer is probably not, but really it's all going to come down to the games. Does the Pro make a real-world difference?
Come, I'll show you.
Well, let's start with FF7 Rebirth, because this gets a new versatility mode, which takes the previous higher quality 30 FPS graphics mode and doubles the frame rate to 60. This is the extra horsepower and the PSSR working together, and the result feels like an uncompromised way to play. You're getting that smooth 60 FPS, but without the image quality trade-off. If you put the Pro's enhanced mode against the old 60 FPS performance sharp mode, the difference is pretty substantial. Base PS5 looks really soft by comparison, and as my friends over at Digital Foundry pointed out in their deep dive, this looks more like 4K than a 1080p-ish image on the base PS5. And we're getting less ghosting and smeary textures. Rebirth is definitely one of those games where the PS5 Pro actually feels worth it. But what about Alan Wake 2? Well, we've still got the quality and the performance settings from before, but both have been upgraded for the Pro. Quality mode targets 4K 30, but now gets ray-traced reflections. There's also less noticeable upscaling noise around fine detail, and environments do look crisper, although it's not night and day. The more accurate lighting means that we also get a reduction in noise around light sources, but then we have performance mode, which is higher resolution than before with better volumetric lighting and shadows. It hits a solid 60 FPS, but it does go without ray tracing. Again, PSSR here handles the upscaling much better on the Pro. Comparing both Pro modes, they do look quite similar in motion, so I would opt for performance mode to get that 60 FPS. Basically, we're getting a much less compromised performance mode with the Pro, and a quality mode which looks cleaner with those nice RT effects. Demon's Souls' new PS5 Pro setting basically takes the old higher quality cinematic mode and doubles the frame rate to 60. Image quality is more or less identical, which is a testament to just how well PSSR upscales. And I'm sure you'd agree, this is one of those games where it's really hard to go back to 30 FPS on the base PS5. It really does feel like it's unlocked the full potential of the game. F124 also enhanced for the PS5 Pro with PSSR, and the headline with this is quality mode that now gets in-game ray tracing at 4K 60, and it can make a big difference to lighting and reflections, giving everything from the cars to the track a more realistic, less flat look. particularly with the darker shadows. We also have Performance Mode, which goes without ray tracing, but it runs at a higher 4K resolution and has a new 120 FPS frame rate, which does drop the detail levels a bit, but if you've got a TV that supports 120, racing F124 at 120 FPS is just buttery smooth. Very quick mention of No Man's Sky, because the Pro Enhanced patch brings PSSR and also an 8K 30 FPS mode if you happen to have an 8K TV, and for the rest of us a solid 60 FPS frame rate. The thing is though, the base PS5 was also 60 FPS, but the Pro should be more stable in more demanding areas. Maybe I need to play a little bit more to get a real sense of the upgrade here, as in the early game area, things look pretty identical to the base PS5. I'm not blown away by No Man's Sky. What I am more impressed by though is Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I actually really like this game, but as I'm sure you know if you've played it, on the base PS5, there are some sections of this that got really choppy, like in the 20 FPS if you went for the quality mode. Now as before, we still have a 30 FPS quality and also 60 FPS performance modes. Quality mode keeps the ray traced effects, but now this hits the full 4K resolution, up from about 1800p on the PS5, and up close it does look nicer. Textures look a little bit less muddy, but this could also be a byproduct of PSSR, which does tend to give it a sharper overall appearance. 60 FPS comes via the performance mode, which now runs at 1800p, up from 1200p, so a bump in resolution, although I must admit I struggle to see much of a visual upgrade. That said, the frame rate across both modes felt much more stable, and there's definitely less artifacting around fine detail. But what about Horizon Forbidden West? Well, this just looks incredible on the PS5 Pro, and I think it's one of my favorite Pro Enhanced upgrades. You get 3 modes: Favor Resolution Pro at 30 FPS, Favor Performance Pro at 60, and if you have a 120Hz TV, then you've also got Balanced Pro option, which splits the difference and targets 40 FPS. In each case, we get a sharper, clearer image with less blurry textures and motion blur. Favor Resolution mode may only be 30 FPS, but it takes the image quality up to gaming PC levels. It looks incredible. For me though, with this game in particular, 60 FPS makes such a difference to playability, and given how good Favor Performance Pro mode still looks, this is my new favourite way to play. Spiderman 2 gets new Fidelity Pro and Performance Pro modes. Fidelity Pro targets 4K 30 with plenty of RT effects and looks amazing, and to my eye a fair bit sharper than the base PS5. Performance Pro is the mode you want though. It takes the base PS5's Fidelity mode with all the RT effects and cranks the frame rate up to 60. And you kind of have to play this game at higher frame rates, so again I think this is the best of both worlds. Let's keep this going, and in Ratchet Clank Rift Apart, compared with the base PS5's Performance with RT mode, which is the equivalent 60 FPS mode, the new Performance Pro uses PSSR to resolve a full 4K image, versus closer to 1440p on the PS5. And if you look close, you can see the higher res detail, there's less aliasing, and also less post-process sharpening. And if you do have a 120Hz VRR TV, then you can unlock the frame rate for an even smoother, if slightly less consistent experience. I got around 75 to 85 FPS. However, Fidelity Pro mode still targets 30 FPS, but gets fancier RT effects, and it's clear that background detail, geometry and textures are much sharper and less blurry than the older Fidelity mode, although Ratchet and foreground detail looks pretty similar. And this also supports a 120Hz mode targeting 40 FPS, and I'm getting between 47 and high 50s. Okay, last one, Hogwarts Legacy. We're getting Fidelity, Fidelity with RT, and Performance modes, each of which get better image quality and PSSR. And there's also a new high frame rate performance mode that basically removes the 60 FPS cap if your TV supports 120 VRR. Now to my eyes, the RT mode has had the biggest upgrade here. It is still 30 FPS, but it is pretty easy to notice the more realistic looking ray trace shadows and extra light casting effects. The floor reflections look pretty similar to me, but the overall sharpness of the presentation is definitely higher. It's a decent upgrade all round. Regular Fidelity mode goes without RT and has a higher dynamic resolution target on the Pro, but to be honest, I couldn't really see much of a difference. Performance mode, again, targets a higher dynamic res, and distant detail is definitely sharper, but again, it's a pretty limited upgrade. I prefer to play at 60, so I was definitely hoping for more from the Pro here. Now, most of these games have had a specific PS5 Pro patch to take advantage of the hardware, but even ones that haven't had a patch, like Elden Ring, still benefit from the new hardware and actually are giving us a more stable frame rate, just out of the box, as it were. And if you jump into the options on your PS5 Pro, you will find this new Enhance Image Quality in PS4 Games option. Digital Foundry did a deep dive on this, and they seem to think this is a post-processing effect that makes a standard PS4 game output to look sharper, like a smart upscaler. The result is less aliased edges, a little bit more detail, and slightly more refined presentation, so we're not talking about a night and day difference, but I do appreciate that Sony haven't just focused on improving the latest stuff. One thing that I can't ignore though is that we still have these different modes. I feel like the way the PS5 Pro was pitched is that it would take away that question of performance mode versus graphics mode or fidelity mode. You know, you could have the best of both worlds. But from the games I've tested, it's mostly just an enhancement of both options. They've both been raised up. In many cases going from 30 to 60 FPS, which is nothing to be sniffed at. That is a big upgrade. But in some games, we're still seeing 2, 3, even 4 different graphics options. Although maybe that's where the Pro comes in. It's a bit more of a pro user's device. And of course, if you've ever played on a gaming PC, then you'll know that there are dozens of graphics options. So it doesn't make things simpler. It just makes all the options you had before look or run a bit better. In terms of the actual hardware itself, the Pro is narrower, it's shallower, and quite a bit lighter than the base PS5. And like before, you can swap out these cover plates for other colors, although the old PS5 and the Slim model's upper covers aren't compatible. For me though, the jump to 2 TB of storage is a big deal, and it does take a little bit of the sting out of the price. And you do still get the expansion port if you want even more storage down the line. Wi-Fi 7 is a welcome upgrade. You probably don't have a Wi-Fi 7 network just yet, but you know, it makes it more future-proof. And also I appreciate having the extra new and faster USB-C on the front. Now, bringing out my trusty decibel meter, the PS5 Pro is actually a little bit quieter versus the original PS5. It's by a few decibels, and they're both running games that I've downloaded. I'm not using the physical disk drive on the OG, although it's worth noting that neither are particularly audible, and a massive step up if you're still on a PS4. So should you buy one, a PS5 Pro? Well, hopefully you have a better idea now that you've seen those games side by side. I think for most people, the answer is no. And maybe eventually, if it's a little bit cheaper, when GTA 6 comes out, I think this is going to be the best way to play that. But for now, unless you sit close to your TV to see some of that finer detail, or there is a particular game that you really want to play at 60 FPS or with a more stable frame rate, then sure. And I think for £700, yes, it's expensive for a consumer console, but there is no way you could build a similarly priced gaming PC yourself. It's not a bad deal, but I just don't think it's worth it for most people, at least not yet. Alternatively, the PS5 Slim has actually just been discounted by $70 in the US until Christmas, and just as I was recording this, I saw my first discount of the PS5 Pro here in the UK. It's about 40 quid off at Argos, so keep your eyes peeled for good deals. But what about you? Have you bought one? Are you planning to, or are you going to give it a miss? Although if you did pick one up, what's the first game you would play on this? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more from me, and I'll catch you next time right here on the Tech Chat.